What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video. This one's going to be a little bit different, but since I do cover graded collectibles and the industry and some of the different players in there, I thought this video makes sense, especially after a number of you reached out and said, hey, what do you think about this? Thoughts? Thoughts? Don't you hate it when people do that? When they send you a big, like, really complex topic and then they just say thoughts? ? Well, it's not the kind of thing I can type out a response to, so I thought I'd do a video about it. And basically, AFA announced yesterday, CGA, their parent company, that they're suspending all loose graded services. And I'm not terribly surprised by that, but I wanted to show you that announcement and just kind of generally talk about what it means. And also, I did a quick survey on my YouTube community tab yesterday with a highly scientific, and by highly scientific, I mean not scientific at all, questionnaire for you guys. So I've got the results for that, and we can talk more about it. So let's dig in. First, CGA, the parent company of AFA, did send out this announcement yesterday. Important update, loose graded figures. Now, this is for all toys. And they had already kind of suspended like WWE and Superpowers and Indiana Jones and Battlestar Galactica. All of those loose services, to my knowledge, had already been kind of suspended. They were just overloaded. And they were only accepting vintage Star Wars figures for loose grading. Well, even vintage Star Wars figures is now off the table. So they have basically said, we've heard your feedback and recognize the delays in our turnaround times for all submissions. We greatly appreciate your continued patience and want to reassure everyone that our top priority is to get caught up on overdue submissions. Now, anecdotally, I've spoken with a few folks who have sent in loose submissions. I haven't sent anything loose recently to AFA in a long time, but I've spoken with a few that have gotten theirs back, and they said it took almost a year. So it's pretty incredible. Obviously, I just got back a couple of orders from AFA that took about 6 months, but those were packaged items. But apparently, their loose graded segment is just completely swamped, and I have some thoughts as to why and what it means and all that in a little bit. But in order to accomplish this, we'll be moving forward with several short-term changes. That's a key. We will temporarily, that's the other key, close our loose grading, including action figures, coins, mailers, and CIB authentication services effective immediately. Now, if you guys have some loose figures, loose vintage Star Wars figures that you wanted to get graded, you need to move quickly. Today is December 13th. If it's already in-house or postmarked before December 16th, so the 15th would be the latest, I assume. It'll still be eligible to be processed. Turnaround times for incoming submissions will be updated accordingly on the website. And of course, they will continue to accept all submissions for packaged items. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little while. But anyway, it's important to know that if you were planning on sending something to Action Figure Authority to be loose graded, today is the filming. I'm filming this on the 13th. It's probably going to release on the 14th. Basically, my advice is to make sure you get your orders filled out and actually postmarked and sent into the USPS or FedEx or wherever by no later than the 15th, because after that, they're not going to take it. And so the first question I've gotten a lot of is this big news to you, John? And honestly, it's really not. I'm not really terribly surprised by this. I speak with enough collectors and subscribers that everybody's frustrated with AFA's loose grading and how long it takes to do that. And I think that if they have that long of a backlog, almost a year backlog, it's basically what UKG did, right? UKG stopped all submissions, and I think they stopped all submissions, not just loose graded. They stopped loose and packaged in order to get caught up. And they apparently have a very long backlog right now as well. Not nearly a year like AFA, but UKG has started accepting submissions again. So they've done it. Collector Archive Services came out, I think, in October and said, hey, we're trying to play catch up, so we're stopping all complex items. So stuff that's like kind of custom. And, I have certainly a number of examples where, really highly complex custom encasement prototypes or some of those really weird items that I have in my collection. They've stopped doing that for now, and probably I would wager that it's probably going to be permanent there too. But but I think that AFA needed to do it, and I'm not terribly surprised, but it's something that I think, they're basically saying it's temporary, and I just question, based on the cost to benefit analysis of offering loose graded, whether they will even ever bring it back. I mean, we know that AFA has a long time ago, I'd say a couple of years ago, they suspended their economy tiers for not only loose but packaged items. And they haven't brought that back. And anecdotally, I spoke with a few people who spoke with AFA representatives at conventions, and they said, we're probably never going to bring that back. We're just too swamped right now. And so the next step is AFA ever going to bring back loose grading now that they've stopped it? Again, they say temporarily, but they've said that before with their economy tiers, and they've never brought them back. At least as of now, they haven't. So that's one. The other thing to keep in mind is that Action Figure Authority, or CGAs, they were recently purchased, and so a larger conglomerate has acquired them, and they're implementing steps to kind of improve processing and operations. And I do think that it's very realistic to, again, I'm just speaking out of turn here. I have no inside information on this. I think it's very realistic that somebody at the parent company that now owns, CGA and AFA and DCA, VGA, they're looking at the cost to benefit of offering loose graded services, and they're wondering whether they should even be offering it right now. I mean, there's so many complexities to grading a loose figure, and all of the different variations, all the different countries of origin, all the different color variations, prototypes, all that kind of stuff. It's a very complex process to encapsulate a loose graded figure. And I'm pulling up CAS's website now, but these cases, they're pretty complex. And even now, after the massive price increases that AFA and CAS have implemented, I mean, at one point CAS was offering to loose grade figures for $35. Now they're $50, and AFA is about the same, right? UKG is probably a little less. I think they're a little bit less, but not much less. But think about all of the effort that goes into processing just one of these figures, and how much time it takes authenticating which variant it is. I mean, there's hundreds of variants, thousands of variants sometimes for these figures. And it's just really, it makes you wonder, at $50 a pop, and all of the, not only the raw materials and the delicate kind of process of making sure that the figure fits correctly, and how there can be slight millimeter differences in the size of the figure, the bootlegs that I collect, and how, one of one they can be in terms of size. I mean, some of those Polish bootlegs I have that CAS grades, they're molded in rubber, and they can vary so much in size and complexity, and getting them to fit properly within these cases. How do they make any money at $50, even at $50, which is obviously a higher price than they used to be? So, I think, me personally, I think it makes a lot of sense and I'm not happy about it, but I think it makes a lot of sense for these grading companies to just stop doing it. I mean, from a profitability standpoint, they make so much more money on packaged items because of the uniformity of the cases. Look at the vintage collection, or heck, even look at vintage Kenner mint on card items or play sets. The size can be standardized, right? And it's a lot easier and more profitable to grade those and churn those out versus the intricate complexities that go into loose graded figures and figuring out the variants. And that has nothing, that's not even touching on the fact that you have to hire experts to be able to authenticate it and know what it is and which country of origin it is. And, if it's a subtle variant like a Spanish POC, I mean, it's just really difficult to do loose grading. And while I hope that doesn't happen, I hope that AFA brings it back, and I hope that Collector Archive Services continues to offer loose grading. If both companies, and if UKG, while we're at it, if those companies decide to stop loose grading, I wouldn't be surprised at all. From a profitability standpoint, it's probably a pretty low value thing, and given the nature of our community and how much we complain about it, and I'm just as guilty, believe me. I'm very guilty about complaining about label mistakes and about the quality of the cases, and stuff like this where they put the saber in the figure's hand versus this where they encase it next to it. And now I hate this kind of case. And, there's just little stuff like that I do. And then you multiply it by the several thousand or many thousands of us that we all do this kind of stuff and complain about the labels and and how they didn't listen to us for what we wanted on the label. It's just a not a very rewarding process for the grading companies to have to put up with people like me. And so, again, I hope that it doesn't happen. I hope that the grading companies continue to loose grade. And I hope that AFA, that this is only temporary, as they made in their announcement. But would it surprise me if all grading companies just said that they just throw their hands up and they're tired of dealing with it and it's not profitable enough? It wouldn't surprise me at all. It really wouldn't. And so as a result of that, I reached out to you guys yesterday in a questionnaire. And I said, with Action Figure Authority announcing today that they are halting all loose grading services for all toy lines, how do you think this will affect the market for loose graded figures? Or how you collect? And so I gave you 3 options. Again, I probably could have spent a little more time in terms of coming up with better options, but I said, I hate grading, so this doesn't bother me at all. And I had 58 votes so far as of the making of this. It was about 17 hours, 58 votes. 43% of you says, I hate grading, so this doesn't bother me at all. And that makes me question why you're even watching my channel. but 43% of you said, I hate grading. Okay, cool. I will just buy items that are already graded. I expected this one to be the number 1 answer. I expected that one to be the number 1 answer, because that's probably going to be my answer on that, is that, if I really want an AFA loose graded, figure, I'll probably just buy it that's already graded, if it's a common item. And then the third one, I think, also makes a lot of sense. Demand for loose graded figures will skyrocket. Time to sell. Let's say that AFA does, or CAS, or both, decide to stop loose grading Star Wars vintage action figures. Me personally, I would think that loose graded figures, whether it's CAS or AFA graded or UKG, I would think that demand would go up, because there is a certain subset of the community, you 43% of you notwithstanding, that don't collect graded. There is a certain subset of us that have a graded run or have graded variants like I collect. I certainly am not trying to collect all of them, but I have variants for certain characters that I like. And to me, I would think that the loose graded figure market will see an uptick in prices. Probably not immediately, because obviously AFA just announced that and there's still stuff in process. I would think over the next year or so, though, as the continued churn, especially among resellers are probably really angry right now. The fact that AFA has stopped taking new loose graded submissions. So those resellers are probably saying, well, I guess I'll move over to UKG or CAS. And so CAS and UKG, I think they have a unique market opportunity to really take advantage of this time frame and to streamline their operations, to improve turnaround times. And I think CAS has already done that. I can't speak to UKG because I don't use them in the UK, but CAS, I have noticed an improvement in their turnaround times. I've also noticed a decline in their quality, though. They've had issues. I've seen plenty of posts on Facebook where figures have arrived with the brackets broken or the figures falling out of the brackets. Obviously, labeling errors. We just saw some of the labels on mine that are curling up because they didn't take the time to press down the labels inside the case. So while their turnaround times have improved, CAS's quality control, I think, still leaves a lot to be desired. But I do think, though, if AFA just continues to halt loose graded submissions for the foreseeable future, let's say the next year or more, I do think that long term we might see an uptick in values for loose graded figures, especially high grade rare stuff. I do think that loose high grade stuff may see a decline because, most, I would say not most, but a lot of collectors that buy loose graded, like, at auctions or whatever, they end up grading them, right? And maybe not most, but some. I do think because now AFA is no longer loose grading figures, unless you turn to CAS or to UKG, if you're like an AFA diehard, fan, and you only use AFA or you only collect AFA graded figures, you might see a decline or a flattening, at least, in very, very near mint plus grade condition loose ungraded figures. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but we'll see. But anyway, I just thought I would touch base with you guys because I've gotten enough of you to ask, asking me my thoughts on this announcement by CGA/AFA. I would love to hear from those of you that did not respond, or for those of you that did respond to my highly unscientific questionnaire. I would love to hear in the comments what you think is going to happen to the market, how will it affect your collecting. And for me, I've already kind of slowed down on my grading submissions anyway. So this doesn't really affect me that much, and I don't really care, to be honest with you. But for those of you that send stuff into AFA, are you mad, or are you just going to turn to CAS, or are you just going to stop and buy stuff that's already graded, like I expected to be the #1 answer, and it was the last answer? So, but anyway, that's all I really had. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.